Ma'am, I still remember, as I've just mentioned you inside the cabin, that I was there at Vadodara Literature Festival, and it was really honored to host you there. It was a really big event with so many authors, 60 plus authors, and I was there at a book signing area. I was looking at the children who were really excited to get a signed copy from you, and from their enthusiasm, like how you feeling right now? You're again connecting with these young minds here today at IMA headquarters.
It's always good to connect with young people. My parents have been both professors, so kind of. And I always find that with teachers, there's never a generation gap. I've seen this with family and friends that because teachers interact with young people all the time, so they move with the time. So this book also, in some senses, is the teaching genes from my parents that all the things that I learned over 30 plus years to kind of explain it and convey it so that it is clear to anyone reading it. So that was the thinking behind it. So I'm always very happy when someone tells me that my 15-year-old child can understand it, my 75-year-old parent can understand it, because that was the whole point. When I at the publisher also, I fought on many things. I said I need headlines, I need highlights, I put summaries. I Most chapters even have a QR code at the end where which if you scan, it takes you to a 2 to 4 minute video on the same subject. So, like as one of our friends was saying, कि chapter का revision हो जाता है translator. So this really, I mean, it was targeted to some extent at young people also, because I think in our education system, that's a big lacuna that we don't have financial literacy. I am a maths and statistics graduate, but I still think that rather than learn the more arcane aspects of, let us say, calculus or uh, trigonometry, which you may not use, at least you must know the basics of finance, the basics of law, the basics of taxation. Because otherwise, people are clueless. They start working and they're still clueless. Not so. So that's also a move towards that. My second book, I'm trying to make it digital, even more basic. That all the questions that I get in forums like this, that really trying to answer that. How do I actually get started? What do I do? So that sort of thing.
Okay, see, as you mentioned the financial literacy, and as in IMAN, we do conferences, as I mentioned, he said twice a week and 40 countries. So even myself, I have traveled in so many cities. And I say one thing that when it comes to like travel in little cities, observation is that people are very lacking in the financial literacy. So my question to you is, how much it is important that we should include this financial literacy subject in that curriculum as per the perspective of student and us. And what topics you could suggest us that this topic should be in your curriculum subtopics of financial literacy.
So, I mean, first of all of you are in what doing your undergraduate degrees? How many are undergraduate degree somewhere along the way?
They are from 16 to 22 years old, so they're
So mostly would be, I would think, undergraduate, right? Or are there the 11th, 12th ones also, the plus two? Uh, plus so yeah, I think, I mean, as I said, some of the basics that what are the various asset classes, what some basics of taxation, some basics of the law as it relates to you, and maybe, I mean, this is Mumbai, so people know about the markets. I can tell you, when I reached IMA, I didn't even know what a share was. I was the youngest in my batch. I was 19, and I did not know what debit was, what credit was, what a share was, because Lucknow back then, and to an extent even now, it's not really a business city. And they were a couple of public sector company, but in the Coditory area, business city. My parents had no interest in money in investing. I think they didn't even know their own salaries, but that's the whole point. I mean, at least if you know the basics, you don't have to know. There's no need to know that how to get the last multi-bagger, and I key to that. Like that's usually goes to nowhere. So you just need to get that broad categories, and you also, in some ways, you what you need is really only basic arithmetic. Things like compounding, actually being able to calculate the net present value of something, being able to calculate the internal rate of return, so that if somebody comes and sells you, let us say, a ULIP, which is a unit linked insurance scheme, you can see that what is the actual money you are paying out, how much is going to that agent, what is your cash flow, and at least discount it and see whether it makes sense or not. Because that is the way people get misled, because they can't do even basic calculations of net present value or internal rate of return, or understand compounding properly. Those are very basic things. This is school level arithmetic. This is nothing exotic, but you need to be thorough with that. I mean, it is a very simple thing. The percentages are not symmetric. If your portfolio falls by 1/3, it has to go up 50% to come to zero. If something falls 50%, it has to double to come to zero. So those are the basics that you forget. I mean, nowhere in math, in management, or even in finance, do you need any esoteric maths. But you need to understand basic arithmetic concepts properly. So those are the things that, and also, often people are at two ends of the risk spectrum. And this, I did a podcast for a large public sector company, and they said that sometimes the executives are close to retirement and they will find that they are still only in fixed deposits and PF and tax saving schemes, because they always thought, let me understand the market property and then I will start. So since you are all young, you will be starting work soon. One of the things I can tell you all, that start early. As soon as you start earning, start investing. Just broadly, that this much in equity mutual fund, this much in fixed income mutual fund, just that broad level, and you can say that I'm not earning enough. Start by saving 5-10% of your salary, but of your increment save 70%. And I can also tell you what not to do. And 70% of the iPhones sold in India are sold on EMI.
EMI.
So, that is, don't get into this trap of, what it looks good. I'm still on Android. I wrote this whole book on my Android phone. It works just as well. There's no reason to, you have to, what you are doesn't depend on the clothes you wear and the bag you carry and the phone you carry. Recently, one of my batchmates from IIM wrote on LinkedIn, which I had reposted. He said he did not come from a well-off family, and he said he had only one shirt when he was 16, and every day he would wash and iron that shirt and wear it. And he said, one day I burnt the collar. And he said, then I said, like, now it's not nice to ask my father. He's already stretched for money. What do I do? So he said, I said, I continue to wear that shirt. So for the rest of however many months they were in that school year, I said, in the beginning, I felt, embarrassed about it. And then I decided, this, what I have inside is what matters. And she went on to become the worldwide supply head for Nestle in Nestle, Switzerland. So it's that every stage when you're walking into a boardroom and all that, you have to know that what matters is what is inside. It is difficult, and it is more difficult when you are young because you want to belong. And people think buying a Tumi bag or it makes you belong. That's the wrong. I mean, there are things we want to spend on. So spend on things which truly bring you joy. But don't spend on things just because everybody is doing it, and you will look different if you don't do it. And because this is very deep. I mean, this is slightly away from the book, but since I've started, since it's a young audience, I especially wanted to give that message that very often, I mean, this is something very deeply ingrained in us. I write a fortnightly column for Mint, and one of my most popular columns was that why didn't buy the Ruchi and Tumi bags? And I didn't I actually saw on LinkedIn somebody posting that some friend of mine bought a Tumi bag, and he said, now I feel a lot more comfortable because, now I fit in with whatever the investment bank, he was an investment banker or something. And so this is something very deeply ingrained within us, and this is something which I've written about in the book also, and otherwise also, that our brain trips us up in many ways because our brain has evolved for things different from what we are trying to use it for today. So our brain is wired for only practically two things: survival and procreation. So why do we want to buy this bag or the in bag and all that? because it is not about the bag. It is about wanting to belong to the tribe. There might be another kind of tribe where the kind of uniform is a jhola and torn jeans. Then you would not want the Gucci bag. Then you would not fit in with that. Because, when we were living in tribes, if you went out of the tribe, you certainly wouldn't procreate, you might not survive. So we are the progeny of people who stayed with the tribe. So even in markets or otherwise, there's a very strong urge to do what everyone is doing, to be in the consensus. Being outside consensus, being in the minority of one is very uncomfortable. But always think from first principles. Think from, what makes sense, not that this is the way it's always been done. And this holds not just for investing, for everything in life. And especially the young women here, I would like to say that. So, I mean, that was not a framework I used to use back then, but looking back, yeah, that's the way I always thought, like, even when I was like 10 or 11 or 12, I said, like, why do women change their names after marriage? I'm not going to. So I told my parents I won't change my name, no Kanyadan. So all those things like this. And I used to write all these fiery letters to the editor, literally when I was 11 and 12 and 13. No, anything I found fatally sexist. Unfortunately, my parents never even argued, never told me that what are you saying and what are you, even this is not how it is done. So they never said whatever, whatever you want to do, you do. So that I was lucky, but some girls have to fight harder, which is unfortunate, but at least start questioning many of those things which are taken for granted, that if you get married and your husband is moving to another city or another country, that you have to go along and you have to, compromise on your career. So don't do that. I have very often people tell me, what would you tell a younger you? I say, what would a younger you think of you? So you all at this stage will have many dreams. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on your dreams. That you might have to fight for them, but don't do that. Don't give up on them. I mean, when again as a kid, I sometimes used to hear aunties in the neighborhood or whatever saying that, oh, now I don't have ambitions for myself, and now my ambitions are for my husband and my children. And I used to think that if this happens in every generation, when are the girls going to achieve their dreams? So, not so. Don't give up on all the big goals and the big dreams that you have. Whenever I get a chance to address young women, I always say that I've been very gender agnostic. Even at IIM, after the first year when I talked, people said, "Oh, the girls said, wow, you're beating the boys," and I thought, how does it matter whether you're a girl or a boy? Now I kind of only underline it because I realize that girls and young women require role models. That that's there's still too few women in the room, in any room. When I started working in the entire Citibank investment bank, I was the only woman officer, and this included that merchant banking, treasury, money market, trading, everything put together. But even now, I mean, yesterday I was at a function for the NSC members, and again, hardly any women. I mean, on the stage, other than one executive from NSDL, I was the only woman in the audience of literally hundreds. There were very few women, and that too, I realized some of them were not active. They had come as partners and all that. So, still a very, very long way for an entry level. Still, there are women, but that keeps getting kind of narrowed as you go along. So please question, please fight for your rights and manage your own money. That's always the number one thing, which often women still don't do that day. I was on this thing for, this was the Business Today Most Powerful Women Awards, and I was on stage and I said, this is a, room supposed in need of the most powerful women in India. I can tell you the majority are not managing their own money. And from the faces, I could see that. I mean, like, but still too many women give up that authority to the men in their family. So this is one part of the way.
Why this mindset of woman is it is because of the society, or she's herself is feel like, no, I'm a career for men. Why her mindset?
It is not just inferior. It's not. It may not even be inferior. it is also that, there are too many things on the woman's head.
Hmm.
And they think that this is one thing my husband is happy to take care of, to usko karne do. There are also many other, kind of scripts running in your head that if for example, if you invest in a risk asset like equity, you will have losses at some point. It's not a if, it is guaranteed. And then when a woman loses money, the script in her head as well as the family is, तुमको तो आता नहीं था, तुम तो बेवकूफ थी, तुमने क्यों किया ये? And that's what she's telling herself also. Whereas if the man loses money, the wife often will not even raise it, thinking, why spoil the uh, peace in my home. So that is the thing that, and I mean, sometimes when I say to men, they say that how will she even come to know that I've lost money? I won't tell her. So it's a very unequal world, and many times, that's the way you have been conditioned. You have not questioned so much of what you are seeing around you. So that becomes your script. So that's why I'm saying question, think from first principles in everything in life. That is this the only way it has happened? I'm shocked to know that even that this is national survey data that 30% of Indian men beat up their wives. That's a domestic violence strategy. And I was shocked. I was talking to a friend's daughter that in a place like Mumbai, she said not just husbands, said like the boyfriend might slap her or push her against a wall or something, and I was absolutely astounded that this is happening in a metro to educated working girls. But so, so be stand up for yourself, and it includes even more subtle things like when you are working, you will find that, and this is data across the world, right up to the boardrooms, right up to the US Supreme Court, that women are interrupted more often, they are talked over more often. So you have to assert yourself and say, let me finish, which I probably didn't do so much in the early stages of my career. You were a much quieter person, but that's the other thing that uh, uh, which is why, I mean, even in I hear still, I mean, in Bombay, in a place like Dubai, that many subjects are considered that these are for boys. That the maths boys will be good at, or science boys will be good at. That even when the girls are topping, the boys will act as if कि हमको ही आता है, तुमको क्या आता है. So is that true? You're nodding.
Sorry. So that's really wonderful insight from you. As you mentioned that you should be really mindful of when it comes to spending your money. Just to flex in front of your peer group, you're just taking money and you're just losing. It should not be like that. And and remember me one incident where we went in from IMAN and into economics and finance too. Where the CEO and MD, Mr. Harish Narayan sir from HDFC. It is the man who uses the same shirt like again and again, and he has again the Android phones, and he's very simple. So he's also explaining us the same thing that it should be very mindful while you're using your money and all. And while I was reading your book, the chapter which is
Like one thing I never stinted on was buying boots. Yeah, that was one thing which I spent. I mean, after I became an entrepreneur, I was spending more than what had been my last salary on books every month. So that part, so that is probably the best SIP I did.
there is chapter called as do you listen to the stories which number tells you, which is I really like that chapter, and where you have mentioned that how stocks for even for a decade you can see there is no growth in stock like for a Bata or a Nestle I mentioned there. So when it comes to because in such situation you're supposed to be very patient. You're not supposed to be like no, let's just sell this car. But today's generation is very impatient. They just want everything in just 10 minutes. They are not just patient as they are supposed to be. So
No,
how
actually, I have said the other. I have said that this is a myth that you must buy and forget. This is a myth. This is not something that I am recommending. This is a
Okay.
general recommendation which I do not agree with. Because even if you say buy blue chips and forget. Now, what is a blue chip? If you look at the original Sensex list 40 years ago, it was industries like paper, textile, shipping. There was Hindustan Motors, which used to make the old Ambassador car. There was Premier Automobiles, which used to make that old Fiat cars. So that the groups were groups like Mafatlal and Thappers and JK, and those have all gone with the wind. I mean, so the list of blue chip changes. This is, I was talking about how your mind trips you up. I mean, one of my favorite authors, I say my pin-up, is Daniel Kahneman, who's written these two books, Thinking Fast and Slow and Noise. So those are mind-opening books. I always say, see, unless you read your unless you feed your mind, nothing comes out. So for all of you, if you, the path to greatness is reading, is feeding your mind. I mean, there's no getting away from it. So these two books are great, but these are like little heavy reading. If you want a lighter version of that, kind of the Kunji or key version of that, there's a book called The Art of Thinking Clearly, which is like it has 3 pages on each bias. So one of those biases is survivorship bias, it's called, but I mean that's a fancy sounding name. But basically, I mean, people remember that okay, your money compounded like this on, like I say, Hindustan Lever or an HDFC Bank. They forget all the ones which didn't do well. So at the time that Kotak and HDFC got their banking licenses, around that time there were a whole host of other banks which got it and which went bust. Global Trust Bank, Times Bank, there was Centurion Bank, there was Yes Bank went through such a big problem. So we only remember the successes. That no, so and so's grandfather bought Hindustan Lever, and this is how it compounded. They could just as well have bought a, JK Group company or Scindia Steamship, which didn't compound. So don't. The thing is that human beings are creatures of the story. That is one thing which is common across all human civilization, from a hunter gatherer to the most sophisticated, and across time. So, so stories are very seductive for us. That's why all ads are stories. If I tell you that in Thane district there are X lakh children who are malnourished, you will turn the page. If I show you a photo or a video of one family which is starving, you are going to donate to that charity. So that's why the stories that numbers tell us. I used to tell my research analysts that whatever you are saying, that this is a great company, great management, good brand, where is it coming through in the numbers? Is it that the market share is increasing when the market, when the, that demand falls, their demand is steadier? Are they able to command better prices, margins? Somewhere it has to show. So, so all stories ultimately have to also show up in numbers. So, I mean, basic thing is that be more data driven in a world which is story driven, because the market is not a human being that doesn't get seduced by stories. So, so the high conviction, what they call, and buy and hold are all stories. I mean, there was a bank who asked us that which are your high conviction ideas, and we wrote a 3-page note saying why by design we don't have high conviction ideas, because high conviction idea is falling in love with a stock, which is not what we want to do. We want to be objective. We want to go by data. And now, of course, I manage money, but the first 20 years of as an entrepreneur, I was a broker and advisor to funds. And I remember telling a fund manager, don't fall in love with your stocks. And he looked up and he said, "Pyar to ho hi jata hai." So that was, I mean, he was a nice guy and everything, but that was his problem, is to just fall in love with the stock. Then you just find things to confirm your thesis and don't look at the data which is against your thesis.
But this impatient generation, how can I shape their minds from impatient to be patient so that they can stay in the stock market for the longer run?
This is the problem. See, all we say that this is the kind of compounding the Indian market has seen. But the SEBI data shows that more than 50% of investors get out of a mutual fund scheme within 2 years. That's the data. So you don't need to hold the same stock, but in this, let us say, the equity category, I mean, there's something called asset allocation. That's like among almost the first chapter in my book. So asset allocation sounds fancy, but it just means that you know the buckets. So the equity means both direct stocks plus anything you hold through a mutual fund or PMS or any other structure. Fixed income is everything from fixed deposits to tax saving schemes to fixed income mutual fund. How much is in gold? If you've inherited something, how much is in real estate? How much is in crypto? Don't have too much in that. But I think first you prop where is it everything, and then where do you want to be? and then don't tinker around with it every day. Because see, in equity markets, nobody knows what will happen in 6 months, 1 year, I would say even 2 to 3 years. So equity should be money you don't need to touch for at least 8, 10 years. So one of the worst pieces of advice is that right at the beginning of your career, be 100% in equity, and when you retire, have 0% in equity. Both are wrong advice.
Correct.
So always, whatever you will need in the next, may need in the next few years. No, naukri chali gayi, you want to study further, you have a medical emergency. So a certain portion should always be in non-equity, because equity returns are not certain. But don't be 100% in low risk, because if you put, let's say, 1 lakh a year for 30 years in a bank, which is compounding, let's say 5.5%, you will get something like 75 lakhs. If you put in a multi-asset portfolio, which is 9.5% compounding, you will get 1.6, 1.7 crores. If it's in a 12.5% compounding, again, not 100% equity, you will have something like 3 crores. So 75 lakhs and 3 crores, that is the range. The other thing is, which people usually forget, is investing globally. And globally doesn't mean only the US. US is not the world. So that is the part, because I give this number that when I started working, the dollar was 12 rupees. So the course of less than a career, there's a 90% depreciation. So when you are planning for something 10, 20, 30 years, hence, you cannot forget that the rupee depreciate. Besides the fact that you should not put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, you spoke about our going global, and so one of the main triggers was the Asian crisis of 97, 98, where and these were not like basket case economies, these were the fastest growing economies of that time. And between the currency fell and the markets fell. So in dollar terms, those markets fell between 50% for Taiwan and 90% for Indonesia. And Thailand, South Korea, etc., were between this 50 and 90. And that was a wake up call for me that, that been an Indonesian, so I'm 90% worth taking it. During Citibank time, I spent a few months in Indonesia setting up Citibank's security subsidiary there. So it was very real. And so that was one trigger for going global at a time when nobody has thought of it. Of course, the other trigger was I'm a learning junkie. So हमने कहा कब तक वही companies करते रहेंगे, Bajaj Auto, Infosys, HDFC. I mean, that list has not changed much. Whereas overseas, the list itself changes, besides the fact that the companies are more complex.
As you mentioned that you went to globally, but I read that there was a people who were trying to say you that don't go globally. It is an Indian Western firm. It is an Indian Asian firm. Western people are not gonna give you the response. So what was your mindset that you still do it and you just prove your decision correct that yes, my firm can also do globally UD
Okay, so the story is that when this happened and I thought, we should go outside India. And at that time, as I said, we were not managing money, we were advising. But then these were not hardly any Indian funds. These were all 95% of our clientele was overseas, and these were really large institutions all over the world. So really some of the largest funds in the world. And by that time you becomes, because we were one of the largest institutional brokers, so by that time you're friends not just with the India fund manager but their boss's boss. I mean, many of them are not even in the business anymore, but they're still your friends. So when I thought of this, I said, I'm thinking of going global, what should I do? And they said add a Philippines or a Thailand, because the fund managers will be the same. It will be the same as emerging market or Asia fund manager. So they'll give you some business there also. I said, what's the point of going to markets even smaller than India? So I want to go to the big market. I said, are you crazy? I'm not going to listen to you. They have the Morgan Stanley, the Merrill Lynch, Goldman, and Citicorp and HSBC. Who are you? You are a nobody. I said, I think I know how to do securities research. So क्यों नहीं कर सकते? So again, first principles thinking. Nobody at that time, so the 90s, nobody had thought of that research could be done offshore. But I broke it down. I said the data is available. Unlike India, my analyst meet used to be physical like this, but there it was, even then it was conference call. So I said you can join from anywhere. So I mean, everything is available. Why should I not be able to do it? So against all advice, we were not just the first Indian, we were the first Asian members of the London Stock Exchange in 1999, other than the Japanese. Only the Japanese had gone west. RBI did not even have a category for making a subsidiary in our business, because no financial firm had ever gone overseas other than bank branches. There was no other kind of a financial firm that had ever gone overseas. So, we were kind of the first to get the RBI to also approve a subsidiary and then in the US. And the most heartening part of all of this was in India, you also personally know some of the journalists, some of the editors. There you knew nobody. So we were only sending out our work, so only our reports were going out. And in no time, we were in Forbes, Fortune, Business Week, Wall Street Journal, front page, Barron, everywhere. I mean, I remember showing my father. My father was very keen for that all of us do doctorate. So he was always disappointed that I didn't go into academics. So I said, Dekho, Papa, I didn't do formal doctorate, but my research is on Wall Street Journal front page. So it's like, and saying that this is the way nobody had looked at it. And so, I mean, it was just, as I said, breaking it down. I mean, when I started this business I quit Citibank at the end of 93, started this on October 1, 93. And so in the beginning, see, one of the triggers why I started this business in the first place was that the market was open. That time, Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister. He opened the market to foreign institutional investors. And I said, now the market will uh, professionalized, because before that there were only the old-fashioned brokers that were around this area, of course. Also, so I said now the market will professionalize, but because this securities research as a career did not exist even at the time when I graduated from IIM, we did not even have a course on securities analysis. So that career didn't exist in India. So in the beginning, along with these foreign institutions, the foreign brokers also came, all the Morgan and Meadows and Jardine Fleming and all that. And I said, these guys have been doing 50, 70 years. I must learn from them. But I looked at the first lot of reports and I said, this is junk. This is not good analysis. This is not well written. So then I never looked at competition. I said, let me go back to textbooks and learn on my own. And whereas the whole industry hired from each other, I never hired from competition. I hired only freshers. And I mean, it's difficult to train freshers, but I said at least they don't have to unlearn bad habits, because I don't like what competition does. So why should I hire from there? So now we became almost like an institute. So now my atoms are all over, buy side, sell side. Recently, I attended, one of our most famous calls is HDFC Bank in 1996, just after its IPO. So on that report, the name is mine, and there's a guy called Vimal Jain. So just I attended his son's wedding last weekend, and it was really good to see how well he has done. And it's almost like your students. A lot of those people actually, even at my last birthday in Dubai, one of my old students, old employees. He is in Abu Dhabi, so he had come and he was introducing himself, my math class student too. So we literally trained the generations. Then that's been a good thing. But the whole point is that again, go to first principles, and nobody had done it. So if I had just gone back and can do this, was that I would never have taken that step. But I said, let me break it down. Why can't I do it? And so, in a sense, I didn't mind being the first to go global. On the other hand, launching the asset management or portfolio management, I waited 20 years till I was confident I could do a good job in terms of having a system which gives some predictability and consistency, rather than buying stock just on my whims that ye stock acha lagta hai to khareed lo. So you have to be objective. You have to think about what you are good at, or up to what thing you are good at, and what you need to work on. So everything, as a professional, you have to look at what is the next step. Like I said, I dictated this whole book on my phone, and I switched on the laptop only for the final editing when I was making the summaries and all that. But this was actually something I worked on. I was I was earlier in investment banking, and then I switched departments in Citibank, and I saw people dictating. So समय तो secretary को dictate करते थे. And at that time, I first used to had write my report, then I type. But in my mind, it was that I have to get to a stage where I can dictate. So it wasn't. Now it is like second nature to me. I dictate everything, every post, every WhatsApp message, everything I dictate. But that was something I worked on. So always you have to be conscious of what is lacking in you as a professional, and you can work on it. But you have to first acknowledge no change happens without your acknowledging that there is a gap. At some stage during my investment banking days, I realized that I didn't know enough about industries or companies. So again, that was something, in 2 years I was at a totally different place, because unless you acknowledge there is something to be changed, nothing changes.
As we're talking to the younger generation, they are always confused between choosing their career paths, and each of them do MBA. So, what influenced your decision to pursue the entrepreneurship?
So at that time, there was no cachet to entrepreneurship. There was nothing, nobody saying it's a good thing. The word startup didn't exist. There was no funding available. Generally, parents would be most unhappy that you given up what was considered at that time the top job, and you're doing this. Fortunately, my parents didn't tell me anything. See, once I went into this area, they said, we don't know anything about this, so you decide what you want to do. So even the job with Citibank, etc., then you do what you think is right. And so they did tell me that don't do this or don't do that. But at that time, as I said, they were like, it was it would there was no positive thing to saying that you quit a job and become a business person. So for me, of course, the two reasons why I did this was one, of course, I was not very happy at Citibank too. So I was looking. I've been looking for a while that and for me, as I said, I am a learning person. So for me, it was that what's the most interesting thing I can do. So I even went to, you'd be surprised, even now it's now called the name has changed. At that time, it was Prince of Wales Museum. So I went to the director and said, what's the interesting thing I can do? I went and met the Economic Times editor. What are the interesting options in life? That time there was no net and all that. So I was looking, and then this Dr. Manmohan Singh's budget came. So I said, now the market will professionalize. Now there will be a market for professional research. So that was one thing. And the last 2 years in Sydney, I was in credit and risk. So that was looking at industries and companies, but from a banking, so essentially a credit analyst role, for equity analyst. So that was good training. So at least in terms of knowledge of industry. The other thing was, at that time there was no SEBI, there was no NSE, uh, and there were about 20 odd exchanges around the country. So every main city had its own exchange. So there was like a Madras Stock Exchange and a Kanpur Stock Exchange, obviously, on all the Delhi, Kolkata, whatever, Vadodara, so Ahmedabad, so all these. So the biggest one was Bombay Stock Exchange, and Bombay Stock Exchange. They advertised saying they would give 71 new memberships to professionals. At that time, there was no corporate membership also allowed. So it had to be a proprietorship or a partnership, because the funda was that the broker's liability should be unlimited. So it should not be a limited liability company. So that was the other trigger. So there were these two things, and people, so they had advertised at that time the 71 new memberships at 55 lakhs, which was a very large amount, but it was a quarter of the market price. The BSE card, as it used to be called back then, the open market price was 2 crores. So people told me, don't even apply. Said, like, this is a quarter of the market price. BSE is a brokers club, which it definitely was. That it's 80% Gujarati, 20% Marwadi. You are a total outsider. Plus you are a woman. तुमको कौन देगा? वो अपने भाई भतीजों को देंगे. So I know people who didn't even apply कि मिलना ही नहीं है. So I said, apply, so कैसे देखा जाएगा. Fortunately, they took 2 years over the process. So धीरे धीरे somewhere the money also got arranged, and you talk for this visualization of goals and manifestation. And to me, the BSE card was the biggest example that it worked, because it was like, उस समय तो लगता था कि BSE card के क्या तो लाइफ बन जाएगी. So it's just like right up there. So and they tried their best not to give it, actually. Whatever the marks, they were subjective. They did try all that, but finally, and the manifestation, they say only visualize the end goal, because the path may be different from what you are thinking. So in the end, I got 2 extra marks for my IOA gold medal, and that pushed me over the cutoff. I didn't even know that in their marking system they had these 2 extra marks, that if you were a CA ranker or a gold medalist, you get 2 extra marks. So I said, I mean, I think the list of 71, I was maybe 68 or 69, but that was not a list I needed to top for me. Yeah, so that was really the start. And then of course NSE came. So they said yesterday was this NSE is also now 30 years. So I still remember going for that. I for 30 years. So this was the association was 30 years. So I remember going for the exam for NSE and then the interview and exam. My pencil box was a repurposed after eight chocolate box. So pencil and pen in that. So
So in short, we should do what interests us.
yeah, that's important.
Hmm.
I mean, when we were very young, I was in school, we were holidaying somewhere where some of the civil servants were getting trained in Shimla. And there was someone who had come to lecture them, and my mother asked him that, no, my children are young, and which field is good, and all that. And I still remember what that gentleman said. He said, it doesn't matter which field you choose, what matters is that you excel in it. So that's the thing, that where will you do a good job? And now, of course, the avenues are far more than they were when we were growing up. When we were growing up, it was pretty much the doctor, engineer, civil servant, academic, bank job. There were like very few things you could do. Unfortunately for me, I didn't know. I was not sure what I wanted to do at all. But I was always fairly certain what I didn't want to do. So at least that way, I mean, like in after my class 12, I was the only person who did not sit for the engineering entrance exam. Even though 11th, 12th, I never lost a mark in maths, and people told me that, at least exam, I can even engineer, I'm clear. So, uh, and after 12th, actually, I went to do an English honors, strangely enough, and to Delhi. I grew up in Lucknow, so I went from Lucknow to Delhi, and I did one term there, and I realized that the system there was a bit weird. I thought, honors meant that little more emphasis on one subject and little less on the other two. But then I realized the other two were it didn't matter. The marks also didn't count. So it's only one subject. So I came after the first and the Dashera holidays, and now that I decided to quit, I was telling my parents that, this is the system. And my father said that this week are the last admissions in the Lucknow University. So that's how I switched. And at that time, Lucknow University had this thing that in arts you could take any free subject. So I took math, statistics, and English. So I was the only person in the university with this combination. And I took it. So I mean that see, be pure in what you want to do. So English was not a scoring subject, but I took it. Even at IIM, in the second year, you could choose subjects which were more scoring, but I did not do that. I wanted that, I must learn what I want to learn. So that's, and also, even in terms of minutes, it's great, of course, even now, you go to Lucknow and there's so many decades, and still people will say, oh, you are the girl who got those 8 gold medals from Rajiv Gandhi, which is nice, but it should not inform your choices. So your choices should be uh, based on what truly matters to you. And for me, again, the benchmarking was never external. Again, in IIM, there were many people who used to actually keep a table in their rooms of all the grade points of all competitors. That was not me. For me, there's only one question: that have I done my best? I should not feel later that I did not do well here, or I could have done better because I didn't try my best. So that should be, I mean, it's much more peaceful also if your benchmarking is internal, that am I doing my best, which seems like a kind of a weak thing to say, but actually that's the highest standard there is. I mean, in Lucknow, I got 88%. The second highest was 78. So if I've been benchmarking, maybe it would the gap would have been so much. So it's just that do your best, choose well, and feed your mind. Of course, maybe, I mean, now there are other avenues to learn also. For me, reading is the easiest. But now, of course, you can practically do a course for any university in the world. At least you can go through the lectures wherever you are. So now the whole world is there.
And just like Coco, and you can choose
Yeah.
and you can just explain it. As you have an MBA, so it is kind of, and I have seen mostly successful entrepreneurs they are having the MBA degree, but I'm someone who's aspiring entrepreneurship. So one question was to you is how much does it matter such formal degrees and formal education to be a skilled person in the job market?
it opens the door for the first thing. It's probably not so much in entrepreneurship. It opens the door so more. आपको नौकरी चाहिए तो degree helps at least mostly. So that also is getting a little blurred now in many areas. Entrepreneurship, actually, nobody cares whether you have a degree or not. I mean, really, it is what you are doing that would matter. Broadly speaking. I mean, there's been enough entrepreneurs. I mean, there's been listed companies and the promoter is class 10 pass and all that. And even in a job, of course, not every organization gives that opportunity. But I mean, we consciously have done it that you can reach any height from wherever, wherever you start from. I mean, my assistant who's been with us over 25 years, and whose example I always give to everybody, that he's the most professional person I have. That if I tell him something, I know it will get done, and if I don't have to follow up, and if it doesn't get done, he will come back and tell me. I mean, he's only class 10 pass. He joined us to Jhadu Katka. So that's when he started from. And the person who set up our UK and US offices for joined us as an office boy in teen, and he was doing evening college to do his undergrad degrees.
So, as there is one, as I mentioned, there it should be education in the stock market. So there is very important skill which matter, which is decision making. To what will happen in stock market. You can't even give the promise that this will happen in upcoming years in stock market, which you have mentioned in so many podcasts that you can't give a promise that this will happen. So how we can improve our decision making skill in terms of this stock market?
So I think, in the beginning, and mostly since people will have a day job or a day business, better to give it to professionals. So almost everybody, that is the case, and which means, invest through funds and don't. You see, the whole point is like investing is neither as simple nor as complex as people make it out to be. You don't have to have the magic formula for a multi-bagger, which actually nobody has. To get this broad categorization, that asset allocation and global diversification, right, that gets you 85-90% of the way through. So वो करके रखो, उसके बाद बहुत माथा बच्ची करने की जरूरत नहीं है. मतलब this is, see, I mean, unfortunately, and this has been my long-standing belief that a lot of people are in the stock market for entertainment purposes. केरल बोलेंगे यही कर दिया तो then what do I talk about in cocktail party? That's उसमें तो बोलना ना ये स्टॉक बताया था 6 महीना पहले and look what has happened. So, and men are more prone to it than women. So actually the data shows that the results for women are better, but men are more confident. And confidence does not equal competency. It will be prepared right in front of you. Because let us say your boyfriend or husband or whoever talks confidently about the stock market doesn't mean that they know anything. And that holds with every field of life. I actually learned it through having mistakes. That people who say that I know how to do this actually may not know really how to do that or to the standard you want. So confidence, we often, I mean, this is also one of our kind of fallacies of our mind, that we take confidence that somebody is confident, they must be good at it. All the experts talking confidently on television that what will be the Sensex at the end of the year, they are completely off. I mean, that's Bloomberg. Bloomberg has actually collated data for 50 years for US and said, all the predictions of that 1 year index are completely not worth the paper they are written on. But every year they will come and tell you equally confidently, because nobody is putting up the tally that this is what you said in the last 10 years in the road happened. और अगले साल में उतना ही confidently they will come at you.
That be very influenced by them and as we talk about entrepreneurship, if I'm starting an venture, so how I should showcase or what qualities should my venture should have so that it will seem like investable for the investors?
Yeah, I'm not in the VC or angel or actually any not public market. So I mean, my they would be very generic. I mean, this is not my day-to-day work. But basically, you have to address a big enough opportunity. That's the first thing that you have to look at. That is what the investors are looking for. That how big can this get? And here, Ravitsari, you asked this question. I would also give you some data that, and this is not just for India, even in Silicon Valley or in the US, women owned ventures get far less far meaning by a wide margin that they get far less funding. And when they did a fly on the wall kind of experiment, what they found was that even the questions asked to women founders are different. That they focus more on what can go wrong, what is the risk, whereas to the men they are asking about the size of the opportunity and how big can it get. So there's a bias in the questioning itself. So I mean, if for women, if you are that kind of thing, you have to realize that the world is not fair, and you have to keep and so don't take rejections personally, and you have to keep steering the conversation back through the opportunities. So that's one thing you can keep in mind. And often that is the reason maybe the funding or otherwise often women owned startups tend to remain small. It's because they're not greening fee enough, or maybe they're not getting funding to do that. So that also is one thing that the student kept in mind, that Cree make and just as much as anyone else can.
Okay. So I have prepared a short rapid fire round for you. So you're supposed to speak what comes to your mind first. Bull or bear?
Or your hare. Actually, our mascot is a hare, and the reason is that hare it can run very fast, but it can change direction equally fast. So that is the and it has something we aspire to. It has nearly 360-degree vision. So when we were thinking of a mascot, I did some study and I said that hare is the right one.
First global. Which is your form. What comes to your mind when we speak first global?
It is First Global. So that is the whole point. It's the first global finance firm out of India.
Oh,
Yes.
stock market,
Ups and downs.
asset allocation,
Cold optimistic.
then investment.
Starts as soon as you can.
Okay. And what advice for 18 years old?
Uh, Spend time feeding your mind. Spend time on learning. And now the distractions are high. I mean, I can see it in myself also. I put uh, the time limits on the phone for various apps, because otherwise, if you don't, you don't know how much time goes just going Twitter or something, and too much time used in that. So for all of you, that's the time thing. So you have to consciously take time away from there and put it in something which will serve you for the long term. And I'm not just talking financially, even in terms of your growth as a person, the mental health, because these are not good things to spend too much time on. And again, you are looking at too many times, you're looking at external validation, you are comparing with somebody else. All those are not good things for your brain to do. So put your mind and time in more constructive things.
And what comes to your mind when we speak India?
Lot of potential, but long way to go.
Youth?
And they are the future.
And this is the most important. The organization, IIMUI.
Doing great work in, I think, just making young people think of something different than just the getting raised out.
Okay. Okay. Can you just open for the crowd for questions? Okay. Anybody has any question?
Oh my God.
Okay.
No, it's okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
this room?
We have. So I'm an ID here, and one thing that I've noticed even today, sadly in Indian families, so there's many elders or the early members see investing as the gamblers, and they are more towards fixed deposits and buying gold. And this helps us with like people like me who want to start early in investing, but they say you are not early yet, so you can invest when you start early. So how can I change that perspective? How can elders and start investing early?
I think you can wait till you start earning. I mean, you can't force your elders to start investing in equity, because also I find that people who've never invested in equity, you get them to invest in equity and then there is a fall, then they just don't have the stomach for it. And of course, as you're older, it becomes more difficult. So you start when you start earning, as I said, from your first salary, you start. And then maybe also the demonstration effect might tell them, that and as I said, that don't go into buying stocks. Look at professionals to manage your money, so that and you can ask again. You can ask your elders that you can put a little bit just in mutual funds or whatever they are comfortable with. But beyond a point, keep on first. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Ishika, and I had a question with regards to this current generation. So basically, in an age of social media, we see our friends, they are carrying iPhones and expensive watches and things like that. People like me, we were insecure about what we currently have. What would you suggest the younger generation about financial literacy, and how can we be more literate, and also about diversification of their own shares?
So, see, financial literacy now, now knowledge is available so easily. Besides books, if you are more comfortable listening to lectures, so as I said, you can whether you get the sort of diploma for it or not, you can actually see every single lecture that even an international university has on that. So there's no excuse not to be financially literate. It would be great if it was part of your school and college, but I think during college time, especially in Bombay, I see people are not that focused all the time on studies. There is enough time that they're taking off, so you can as well spend that time in understanding things which you need to know. So and as far as getting influence to buy things which are really beyond your means, it is unfortunate that that pressure is so much now. We did not have as much when we were growing up. But you have to kind of steer clear of that and be focused on what you're doing. And that's why I give the example of this batchmate of mine who wore that torn shirt for the whole year. That it doesn't matter ultimately. It matters of the story you are telling yourself. What are you telling yourself about yourself? That I don't have the bike that my friend has, so I am kind of inferior. No. So that's what is the story you're telling yours. Ultimately, it is all about your self-talk. What are you telling yourself?
Kanish?
Yeah. So ma'am, the reason he spoke about this flagship and today's relation and a lot of his that between Bali started at Betterman Travi, which did not have bigger to 30 quarters bands for years off. But now now we see every video person is an influencer. Every second person wants to be a role model and push that essential, yeah. You know, 30 years journey, you have seen two major financial upheavals, one in 1999 and in 2008.
No, several, two. Yeah, there was the Asian crisis. Before that, it was the 87 was, of course, I will agree with the market, but so there was the Asian crisis of 97, 98, then there was the tech crash, and then, of course, 2008, then there was COVID. So that's plenty.
So now we seem to be moving towards the technology available that AI is taking its space. So speaking about the rewards and its announcement ability to kick upon internet, how do we distinguish between the noise, not the direct news that this is the correct actually advice, and that's upon that the current technology is not going to really take out your job, but it's going to be productive alternatives.
So first of all, most of it is noise. So assume it is noise, and assume that if somebody is recommending something, they are being paid to recommend that. That is broadly true. Especially, I find that during that crypto boom, even the beauty influencer was talking about crypto platforms. So that kind of thing, is nonsense. Anybody who tells you that they have this magic formula that you can become a day trader is fooling you. It's as simple as that. Every time SEBI has got hold of recently, there was that Sake. He made 600 odd crores in course fees, 600 plus crores. How much did he make in trading? He made losses in trading. So, So, and people think, oh, this is so simple. So this is another trap today, that it's so simple that it's only a matter of earning 1% a day. How difficult is that? Now, if you can earn 1% a day, you can multiply your the money 7.3 times in 1 year. So that means somebody starting with 1 crore can make it 20,000 crores in 5 years. So if that person has this magic formula, why are they selling it to you for 10,000 rupees and 20,000 rupees? They will be making the money themselves. So it is all nonsense. I mean, it's as simple as that. Nobody has this magic formula. Even in terms of investors, there's been no investor in the world, let alone 100%, even 50% of their ticks are multi-baggers. People tell me, oh, you found IGFC Bank in 96, you found Amazon in 2001. Tell us which is the Amazon or HDFC Bank that we can buy and forget for our child for 25 years. And nobody knows this. You have to buy it as a, I mean, see, life and investing are all a game of luck and skill. It is not pure skill. So never fool yourself. And we are the easiest people to fool. So you can, when things are going well, then I am this genius. I found these stocks. And things are going badly. Oh, this is the villain. The central bank ne ye kar diya. वो company छोड़ दी. Operator ने चला दिया. Whereas both in the up and the down, there is an element of luck. So even when somebody tells me, your success story and secrets of your success, in every success story, there is always luck. Whether you call it luck, whether you call it divine hand, whether you call it karma, there is an element of being in the right place at the right time. And for success, I mean, the best analogy I've found is like in a bank locker. I don't know how many of you know this. I don't know if people go to banks anymore. But, there are two keys. One key is with the customer and one is with the manager. And so life is about those two keys. So the first key is your being ready. So working on yourself and being ready, so that when the opportunity comes, which is the second key, the door opens. So that's the thing. But don't fool yourself that it is ever all skill. And investing is a game of probability. Life is a game of probability. I mean, who knew in beginning of 2000 that a pandemic would come? And if I told you that such a pandemic would come, which would kill so many million people, where a lot of industries from aviation, hotel, travel, autos will all come to zero. Would you have said that there would be a bull market? So life is as unpredictable as that, because there was a bull market around the world. So that's the thing. It is not in 2022 beginning. Economists, which has been following geopolitics for well over a century, they made a list of 12 geopolitical hotspots around the world. And they did not have Russia, Ukraine, where the war broke out the very next month. So don't fool yourself. So prepare yourself, but don't fool yourself that, you're, one of the, since I said I hired freshers, one of the most difficult things to teach freshers is that the whole education system is that this question has this answer. Whereas since living with ambiguity, living with probability, so that's always the very difficult, that you have to make decisions with imperfect information. So that's a big mindset shift. But the influencers, I would say, by and large, steer clear. Go back to first principles. Learn the principles from, as I said, whether from books or from college courses. It's a waste of time looking at. And also sometimes I find, the influencer might give you the right information on one thing. This also is something I have seen. That they might explain something like they've explained PTF very well. This I'm talking about some finance journalist who's now gone. But what they're telling you, let us say on global investing, may be totally wrong. So you might think, ye to theek baat batata hai, but then again, you don't know the agenda for the next thing they are telling you. So unfortunately, there is a huge amount of mis-selling overall. Your bank relationship manager often misleads you. So a retiree goes there, they go and to sell an insurance policy. Most thematic funds, I would say, are missold in that sense that the theme that all these mutual funds, defense fund, small cap fund, IT fund, they will all come at around the peak of that cycle. I mean, we've mapped it over 25 plus years. It is not just happened in the last 2 years. It has always been the case. You talked about AI. That's a big subject. I write a fortnightly column for Mint. So one of those columns I had written about technology, that whenever a new technology comes, the first instance it is that it will reduce jobs, that it will cut employment, but eventually employment always increases. I mean, in the 80s when banks were getting computerized, I was still a student, but you had all these um strikes by unions saying everything the bankers do will get computerized, which has actually happened. I think 75% of what bankers used to do back then has definitely got computerized. But the employment in banking has gone up manyfold. And this is, you go back 300 years when weaving was mechanized or anything, any kind of technology eventually increases employment. And AI, there's a research paper called Agents of Chaos, that what do if you kind of give the keys to the AI, what they do, from wiping out databases to security breaches. So no enterprise is kind of going to hand over the keys. So you will always still need the IT services company in the world. So that's
Can we take two last question if you
yeah.
okay. Isna?
Thank you, ma'am, for this opportunity. As you say in a book, and usually that most of the investments that we should do should be in a value proposition or something that we seem of value, and not to have all your eggs in one basket along with the current trends. So my question to you is framed with the current trends as the war is going on, and if the oil prices are rising, and people are spreading this news that crude is going to be like the stock market is going to crash, the crude oil, LPG, everything has not boomed and prices are going to go skyrocketing. So in such a scenario with us being the youth and maybe going to invest in future, what is like one key, you could say, risk that we should take and one key risk that we shouldn't take at the Paris situations, which should be.
But don't get too bogged down in the current situation. So, I mean, we did this analysis when the sort of build-up was happening on the Russia-Ukraine border in 2022, going back 50 plus years, looking at every geopolitical upheaval. There was like the two Gulf Wars, US bombing Libya, 9/11, Afghanistan, and we found there's a lot of turmoil around that incident. And whereas the conflicts often go on, I mean, there be Russia, Ukraine, 4 years and counting. But the impact on the markets is forgotten pretty soon. So that was our finding. And if I did find an exception to this, well, obviously you don't have enough data for which to do a true statistical analysis, but here statistics were not required because it happened every single time. And more recently, Financial Times had published something where they went back more than 100 years. So basically, included the two world wars also. And their conclusion was the same, that don't react to geopolitics. The big crashes in the market have been for other reasons, the ones I mentioned. That whether it was 1929 depression or the tech crash or 2008, they were all for other reasons. And so even in World War II, the only stock markets that had a big impact were the countries which were defeated, Germany and Japan. So broadly, I mean, you have to forget what is happening just in the moment. So don't tamper around with your asset allocation too much for what is happening just then. I think there was somebody here who wanted to ask you a question.
So basically, intraday trading. Intraday trading is a you will know about it. So it's basically a day-to-day trading. So most of the youths are basically like, because marketed in that way that it is like as you should invest in it and all. So what is it like? And if you see statistically, most of the traders lose money in that way, and the youth are basically
Don't do it. Or what
yeah.
else do I say?
So
Yes,
is
just
it
don't do it.
is the strategy which they are using is wrong, or is the illusion like basically
It's an illusion. I mean, this is that's the SEBI data. 93% of the people lose money. Even the people who make money make an average of 5,000 rupees a month. So it's not something great that you are chasing in the first place. Even the people who make money, people who are less educated lose more money. People who are earning less than 5 lakhs a year lose more money. People outside metros lose more money. I mean, this is a ridiculous thing. It is just gambling, and a gambler always loses. And you are again competing against only that 7% is also not individual. The 7% is the organized sector. The whether it is foreign or Indian. So it is the larger organization. The individuals are nobody is making money. Only the people selling courses are making money. So don't even go there. This is like a, even in some of the other countries they did this study that Brazil also same thing that 90% people lose money, and most of those who make money don't even make minimum wage money. So it's just like completely stupid to even start there.
So I guess it is in that. It is that. It was really amazing, and thank you so much for being here. I'm right now feeling intellectually very steamboat. I learned a lot of things from this phone session.